Hello, everybody, and welcome to the High Return Real Estate Show. Today is a very, very special episode. I mean, they're all special, and I know I always say that, but today we're going to do something really, really cool. And of course, I'm here with my illustrious business partner, Mr. Jack Gibson. How are you, Jack?
I'm doing great, Shecky. How you doing today, man?
I'm doing great, and I'm very excited. The gentleman that you see on the screen, we're going to introduce him in just a minute, but we do a lot of business with this guy. And there's a reason why we do, because he is awesome and does a lot of really cool stuff. And we're going to spend the time today illuminating a lot of internal processes that, just kind of, let's just call it, open the kimono, let's just say, and reveal some really awesome internal processes and have you, the listener, really understand a lot of what goes into bringing a property through its entire journey, from the time it even gets looked at as an intent to acquire and looking at those deals, to acquisition, to figuring out rehab, to getting it all the way to the standards of what a great property management team would want, to getting it over to them, to getting it tenanted. I mean, it's a much longer journey than what you think. So stay tuned. We got a really, really just a very, very great educational episode for you.
Welcome to the High Return Real Estate Show, the podcast for heavy hitters. Two men, one mission. It's time to build your empire.
Welcome back, everybody, to the High Return Real Estate Show. This is Jeff Schechter, aka Shecky, here with my business partner, Jack Gibson. And today we have the pleasure of introducing Mr. Isaac Barrow from Parrot Properties. Hello, Isaac.
How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
Great.
All right. So I'm good you're drinking your water, because you're going to need your voice for this one. So we do a lot of business with you and your family team. I know your family's involved in this. And the reason is because you're really helping us, not just on the rehab side, but especially on dialing in the acquisitions. And, it could be said, it's a little bit cliche, but in the real estate world, there's a common cliche that goes like this: you make your money on the buy. And it could not.
Never heard that.
Never heard that?
Never heard that.
Okay, well, yeah, I've heard it 1,000 times. And
Thousand times.
I think
You said this was educational.
It's investing in general.
Yeah, no, I never heard that.
Yeah, investing in general, but especially in real estate. And so
Makes
I want to talk to you a little bit about what the process how things go. So let's start at the very, 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 very beginning, right? So first of all, how do you even find deals? Let's talk about that, because I know you work with other wholesalers and there's lots of different ways that you get properties or get notifications of deals coming across your desk. How does that happen? What sort of processes are gone through? How do you weed out the good from the bad, things like that?
Well, in terms of like the good deals from the bad deals, is that what you're referring to?
Well, the first place is, let's start with just how. In other words, how are you getting deals to come across your desk? How do you learn about deals? What are the sources of seeking out deals, that sort of stuff?
Well, I would say we pursue pretty much every avenue available to us to get new deals, whether it be, we're always scouring the market. I'm looking on Redfin. I look on Craigslist. Lately, I've actually found Facebook Marketplace to be a place where you can find a deal every once in a while. We, just like everybody else, we do direct mail marketing. So people call us all the time. Also, at this point, we've been in business for 3.5 years. So people will call us all the time and say, hey, I saw you guys on the internet, or, oh, you bought a house for my friend, or, oh, we bought a house from, this person 3 years ago. And, they'll say, oh, I got another now that I want to sell, or, oh, I just bought this, I want to sell this to you guys too. And, we have a lot of good rapport with a lot of these people. So they'll call us oftentimes. I don't want to say before, but they'll definitely think of us and give us a call when they have something. So I would say, those are pretty much the avenues that we use: Zillow, just referrals. I mean, referrals are a great way to get new deals. We've had people who knew like old tenants of ours, and they'll call the tenant, and the tenant will call me and say, hey, I have a buddy who wants to sell a house here. Let me know what you think, and then we'll give them a little referral or something if we do buy it. So yeah, I mean, there are all kinds of different avenues, and we try to keep our options open and adjust when we have to.
You glossed over very quickly direct mail. Can you elaborate a little bit on what you do with direct mail and how that works?
Yeah, my understanding, that's your biggest source.
Yeah, I mean, we send out postcards, letters, whatever the case, and we just send them out just like everybody else. Yeah, I mean, you could send a bunch out at a time. So,
who do you target when you send out a mailer?
We try to just analyze what's been successful for us in the past and sort of target that. We don't. I don't know. We try to adapt as much as possible and look at what's worked for us in the past and go to that, whether it be an area or something like that. Like we'll just hit it up if we think it'll work, and if it doesn't, then we'll try something else.
But I'm saying the direct mail effort is really designed to find some sort of quote unquote distressed owner. Right. Is it typically an owner occupant? Is it somebody that owns an out-of-state property? Like, I'm just trying to give the listeners a feel for, how are these good deals found?
I mean, I honestly would say it's a really inexact science. I mean, sometimes it happens to be people who are out of state and maybe have a house that's been vacant for a year, or sometimes it's somebody who has a house that, they've taken really good care of, but they've been living there for 50 years and they're really old and they just want to sell the house and they don't have anybody who will inherit it. Sometimes it's a person who inherited the house from that person and they just don't want to deal with it. I would say a lot of the time it's just landlords. So yeah, I mean, but it's a mix. I think there are all kinds of different situations that get somebody to that spot where they want to sell their house. I mean, I could say that as someone who's wanted to sell a house of mine. There are all kinds of different situations that can lead you to that point. So,
and
it's really a mix, I would say.
So I guess what I'm curious is when you say it's an inexact science, it sounds like you're doing a lot of testing in terms of, what works and what doesn't. Can you elaborate a little bit on that too? Like, are you doing like an A/B split test? Are you doing ages? Are you doing incomes? Like, what are the kinds of things that you test when you try and tweak your direct mail campaigns?
I mean, we've done zip codes in the past, where we'll just hit a zip code that we've noticed we've gotten a lot of deals in. We don't really target like people individually. We just look at the area. That's the most important thing to us, because, and when I say it's an inexact science, I just mean that it's hard to predict. Like, I don't, we might buy 10 houses in one zip code in 1 month. And then the next month we say, hey, we should mail that zip code, and then get nothing out of it. Like, it's just so hard to predict. But in terms of, the tweaking, we just, we'll try a zip code, and if it doesn't work, we'll try another, or we'll go to some other strategy, whether it be, people in, I don't know, tax sale situations or code violations, stuff like that.
And I know you're a licensed broker too. So are you finding any stuff on the MLS?
Once in a while, more than I used to. It used to be a lot harder to find stuff on the MLS, but I would say over the last year, it's been a little easier sledding on the MLS.
Isn't the MLS typically where you're going to get like your finished product type of, mostly type of product is on there, where they're not distressed, and and so you don't really have much of there's not really a really deal to be found there.
Right. I mean, more often than not, that is the case, but there are still people who list just because they want to they really do want to sell, but they want to put themselves in front of the largest set of eyes, as opposed to just calling Bob the wholesaler and seeing if he'll buy it. Yeah. But there's still, a lot of them are still sometimes and there's so many houses out there, but there's still people out there on the MLS who are still motivated, still have a distressed house. They want to, be in front of as many people as possible. So yeah, I mean, there's still deals to be had, not nearly as many as, off market, but still, it's something to keep an eye out. And I know a lot of agents at this point. I mean, I've worked with many agents in the past. So sometimes I'll just call people up. I know property managers too who work in the areas that I like to be in, and I'll just say, hey, you got anything for me? And I've bought houses from them in the past, so that they know we're serious. So yeah, I mean, definitely deals to be had, but yes, certainly tend to be more finished product type stuff, and there's a lot of retail stuff there too.
So from any given year to year, right? Like a year ago, you could have mailed your postcards to a given zip code and got nothing, right? And then you do it again a year later and you could get 10, 15, everything. Right?
Yeah.
Because it just changes, the market changes so much. And
yeah, and just people's motivation. I mean, I remember one year we mailed out a zip code and it was in like October, and it was the first time we'd even really done it. And it really, really worked. And I couldn't figure it out until later, but it's like, people want Black Friday money, they want Christmas money, so they're just selling their stuff. Actually, I think it was like 2 years ago. But yeah, I mean, it is really random. It's just something where you never know. I mean, you can't really predict people landing in that situation where they want to sell. And it's not always bad, like they're in a bad situation, but you never know what can happen that will lead them to that point. Sometimes people just want to move, something like that. So yeah, it's very, very random. So adapting to it is important.
Do you see that the more work that a property needs in rehab, that usually the better the deal you can get on that?
Yeah, I think especially in my experience for a lot of homeowners, because I think sometimes people are a little more familiar with the work that it needs. If they're a landlord, they're not in front of it every day. Whereas with a homeowner, if you live in your house, I mean, I know exactly what my house needs where I live. I know how much work it needs. I probably wouldn't if it was a tenant living there. So yeah, I mean, I would say it depends on the deal, but if people are fair, yeah, I would hope so. Yeah.
So what I'm just kind of curious now is let's move along. So you get all these properties that are coming across your desk.
Mm-hmm.
What's the main determinant of what is a good deal? Like how do you separate out? Because what we see on this end, I mean, we're on a lot of wholesalers lists, and hedge funds and all this other stuff, and like I see sometimes good deals come across my desk, and ones that are like, God, are you freaking crazy? Like it's just, I don't know. It seems to be like all over the board.
My deals would fall into the latter, I'm guessing.
Yeah. So let's not go there. So, what I'm trying to figure out is how is it passing your sniff test? Like, what are the kinds of things you look for in terms of what's a good deal and what's not a good deal?
I mean, for me, I would base it on saleability. So for example, I try to stay away from houses that are, rented out. It's just, they're harder to gain access to. If the tenant is difficult, that can make it hard to sell. House size is important for me because, I mean, it's hard to sell a 1-bedroom house. It's just hard. Like, people want a 2-bedroom or a 3-bedroom. Or if it's an investor, it raises the rental possibility. And if it's a homeowner, I mean, if they have a family, they can't live in a 1-bed. So saleability and the things that go into that I would say house size. Obviously area is super important, but if the value is there, then you could sell a house anywhere. So I would say just location, rent possibilities, and what the end buyer can eventually resell it for. I mean, I try to get it to the point where I could sell it to an investor for like 70% of what I think it would be worth, because generally speaking, the people I sell to are houses that they're eventually going to sell them again. So something where I feel like they're getting a good deal and I'm not upside down on it, basically. So yeah, just what's special about it, basically. Like if it's just a 2-bedroom house with dingy brown carpet, knob and tube wiring, and they want $40,000 for it, and it's in a $20,000 area, I don't think that's a good deal. So just
Yeah.
what I can say about it that's like, oh, this makes it kind of unique or a good deal, and I could say it and say it with conviction that this is what I like about it.
You know, you bring up an interesting point, and one of the reasons that we like doing business with you is that you're working backwards. Many deals in the real estate investing world are working forwards, and what I mean by that is they say, okay, well, working forwards is I bought a property for X and I put X into it, and I have to make X amount of profit, so therefore my end price is Y.
Right.
We're working backwards. We're saying, hey, look, we have to have investors that get a reasonable amount of return, you know, from a standpoint of price to rent ratios and things like that. And, you know, being a property right so that they can get some good cash flow. We then have to, you know, back out all the rehab costs and all that other kind of stuff. And then hopefully when all that is said and done, leave a little meat on the bone for us. But notice that I mentioned that last. Now, it's not to say that we're not a profitable company. Obviously, we have to be to survive, as do you. But I love that you postured it that way. And I'm really making this point because I want the listeners to understand that there's not that much of what we're doing going on out there in the investment world, especially as it relates to other turnkey companies. So we're always putting our investors first and putting in a situation. And, you know, we've turned down plenty of deals that might appear to be good deals to other investors. They might be a buy for someone else, but they just did not make sense for our model. And you know as well as I do, there's a couple of them that I've been to those properties with you and sat with you in person and go, man, I'd really like to buy this property because it's a cool property, but the numbers are just not going to work. And so I think it's important to understand that, you know, working backwards is really, really crucial. And so that's something that we've enjoyed about the relationship with you.
Yeah, I mean, once you're able to do that, if you have a good, trustworthy relationship with somebody who can help you and you can help them, it actually becomes quite a bit easier because you know exactly what you're looking for. So that's kind of how I've approached it.
Exactly.
So just you're doing.
I want to ask about in today's market. Are you really finding what they call good deals? Or are you just finding a fair deal, right? Where somebody they're selling in a $20,000 house that in a $20,000 neighborhood, and it's not a great deal. It's just a fair deal. It's what it should get. Is that more typical just to get fair, or are you actually still able to, with all this, you know, gentrification and prices going up in India, are you still able to get good deals?
I think we are. I mean, I think we still don't really have any trouble finding good stuff. I mean, and when we think it's just a fair deal, we try to get it to negotiate to the point that we have a good deal, or just be realistic in what our end price is going to be. So I like to think things we send out are good deals for whoever we're selling to. So you know, I guess that's just how I look at it.
Yeah, good.
Yeah, you touched on a word, Isaac, that I wanted to talk about. It was called negotiation. So I know that, like, if you go back to the comment that I made earlier about sitting in a house going, man, I'd really like to buy it. You know, there's obviously some emotion on my part. And, you know, one of the toughest things that we do, and probably for you too, is removing the emotion from the purchase process, because it's very easy to get attached to a certain property. It's like, oh, wow, I really like the way that house looks, or I really like this area, or I know this is really close to another area of gentrification, so I really want to pick this one up. So what's involved with you in your negotiating process? How are you able to remove emotion? What are the kinds of things that the back and forth that happens between you and the sellers? Can you elaborate a little on that?
Yeah, I mean, well, I've found in my experience, I mean, I don't know how many houses I've been to since I started doing this. I've been doing this about 3 years, 3.5 years, probably actually more than that, but I don't know how many houses I've seen, hundreds. So at this point, it's kind of, the hard part for me is actually getting attached to a house, not being attached. And when I do, when I really like what I see, I've noticed that just being very upfront about what you can do and what, even if you like the house, what makes sense for you. And in my experience, and this is also as somebody who's been a seller, I never feel like, disrespected or anything when people make an offer that's not quite what I want. So I just try to be as straightforward with it as I can. And in terms of removing the, I would say, like, desire to get the house and to pick it up and all of that. I would say just being really transparent about what you can do and what your numbers are. And I kind of know, even before I go to a house, I kind of know, like, this is probably what I need to get it for. And, even if we're a little bit off, I can make it work if the deal is good enough. So I would say just looking at it like a situation of being prepared for what you're getting into. So.
Yeah, that's cool. So now let's talk about, okay, so you get the house, you obviously have a number of different avenues that you're reselling a house to. You may be reselling to other wholesalers. You may be reselling to other investors. You may be acquiring a property for us so that we can rehab it and get it ready for our investors and things like that. But there's a number of different avenues that those are getting sold off once you acquire them. What happens next? I mean, what happens in terms of closing? What happens in terms of anticipating rehab? Walk us through that.
Well, obviously we have a couple title companies we typically use. So obviously just sending them everything they need, and just keeping in touch with them, keeping the seller in the loop, keeping the buyer in the loop if I have one already lined up. So just, keeping that in tune. And then in terms of anticipating rehab, honestly, for me, it's kind of just looking around. It's kind of a checklist in my head where I look first when I get there. Okay, how's the roof look? How's the siding look? How the windows look? Is there central air? Is the meter in place? And then estimating, like, is this a house where some significant exterior update is going to need to be made, and sort of knowing how much that's going to cost. And then on the inside, just look around, like, is the flooring stable? Are there cabinets in place? Are there appliances in place? How's the furnace look? How's the water heater look? And I kind of know what those things cost. I know that a water heater costs about $500. I know that a furnace costs somewhere from, on the low end, $2,000, on the high end, probably like $3,500. And just, I don't know, it's just a mental checklist, I would say, of just everything that a house needs to be really ready to go for a tenant or for, a homeowner to move in. So just going through that, and I always sort of add on at least a few grand just because you can't see everything in a 10, 15, even 30-minute walkthrough. So just having a mental checklist and just the benefit of experience, I would say that's been a huge plus for me. Also, my dad is a contractor, and he has been since I was born, and even before that. So learning from him and learning from the contractors we have has been big, and also walking through houses with other people's contractors. So that has given me a lot of just things to look for. So just experience and just having it in my mind and just being prepared.
Yeah. And I know for us that we've got some pretty, probably more than anybody else that you work with, more stringent standards. Cause I know I had emailed you that list the other day of all the things, because we got to go through a nice thorough third-party inspection when we're done and show that to our investors. And then from there, it's still got to go through the final quality control of the property management team that we're associated with. So those two are really, really stringent benchmarks. And I know I kind of, maybe freaked you out a little bit when I sent you that list, because the list is extremely long. Like, I look at it and it's just daunting. But we found over time and through experience and through obviously our own mistakes in the past, that if we don't address all 200 and something items that are there, then we leave ourselves open to some sort of issue. And, so I don't know if that's stuff that you're doing for, I know you're doing some rehabs for us on occasion, and we use you for some of your crews for overflow and things like that. But how do you feel about that ridiculously long checklist? Is that helpful? Is it not helpful? I mean, is it daunting?
Honestly, it's not really that daunting to me because a lot of the processes you listed in that email are processes we kind of use just in terms of equipment and final things to do and just the whole process of here's how we get it from A to Z. So it was, I think that's pretty, I think that's stuff that should be in place when you're operating at a high volume level.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I think that's those are the things that should be in place. So I think that's perfectly normal. Didn't really scare me at all.
Okay, good. I'm glad to hear it. So what then happens? Because it seems to me like almost every property that we roll through a rehab with, there's always some sort of surprise. I mean, we had one come up today. A contractor called us and go, "Oh yeah, by the way, your flooring sucks, and we're going to have to put in, another $3,500 worth of vinyl plank flooring." And it's like, oh, well, that just increased our cost by $3,500. Like it wasn't a small number, right?
Right.
And so, what do you do like when that happens? Because you've obviously already got, an acquired price and an end price and what you're trying to do, and then the surprise comes along and throws a wrench into all that. Like, what happens then? How do you address that?
Well, obviously, I mean, if it's something that you absolutely have to do, it's got to get done. So that's the first thing. But it's like I said before, just being prepared. Just when you make your numbers, just understanding like here's what we have to do to make sure we don't have to come back or get back into it after we think we're done, or get even deeper into it than we think we have to. So just being prepared and having a system where from the first step to the time you cross the finish line, that you don't have to continue coming back and worrying about like, oh, is this going to come up? Is this going to come up? You're going to have surprises. I mean, that's just, I wouldn't say it's unavoidable, but it's likely that you're going to have surprises because you just can't catch everything in a, like I said, in a 10, 15, 30 minute walkthrough. You're going to miss some things, but just keeping those things down to a minimum, making sure you're 100% on about the major big ticket stuff like roofing, plumbing and electrical, flooring, siding, windows, mechanicals, appliances, stuff like that. Making sure like, even if this goes a little bit sideways, I'm not going to be in a situation where I have to redo something I already paid for. So just making sure you're on or in the numbers and being pretty diligent about it.
Yeah. So I want to ask maybe a question that is probably going through the mind of certain investors right now, because like most of our investors are out of state. And there seems to be this big trend in investors that want to come to like Indianapolis or Columbus or any of these kind of nicer, lower priced Midwestern cities. And they want to come from California or New York or Denver or somewhere where it's more expensive and do the famous long distance BRRRR. BRRRR meaning, buy, rent, rehab, repair, rinse, repeat. I don't even remember what all the R stand for, but essentially doing what we're doing together, but doing it onesie, twosie on their own and doing it from 7 states away. And you get on some of these real estate forums and, there's so much conversation about like, well, if you buy from an end user, like a turnkey company like ourselves or any end user that is preparing a property for an out-of-state investor, and they're going to suck all the meat off the bone. That's their words, right? But knowing what we know on the inside, the part that I have such a challenge with is I don't understand how the out-of-state investor guy or gal can come out when they don't have, the systems for buying like we have. I mean, like we're buying in bulk, we're buying 5, 10, 15, 20 properties at a time and paying cash. And I know, because I see all the lists and I see all the pricing, we're buying stuff typically $5, $7, sometimes $10,000 cheaper per property than what a single investor is going to buy it for right out of the gate.
Yeah. Right. Sometimes 20K below.
Sometimes 20. Yeah. Because we have the resources and the relationships to do that. You know,
Right.
secondly, then you start talking about the rehab and all the processes in place. If that person from out of state comes in and says, well, you know, let me just find a good contractor, then sure, there's possibility of finding a good contractor, but they're working with somebody for the first time and maybe have not, you know, addressed all those, or they want to build a team. Um, I just don't understand how they can come out. And I don't know, you have some experience working with some out-of-state investors. How does that work for them?
Honestly, I don't know too many who have done the thing where they sort of self-manage and take care of it themselves like a local like myself would. So I don't know, you know, too many people who have tried that. Honestly, I mean, even for an instator, it's tough to get a house from beginning to end. And I have, you know, boots on the ground, and I know people around here. It's just, I think for out-of-staters, I guess it's just a networking thing. And I mean, it's even hard, like I said, for a local like myself, it's hard to meet people and meet people who you can come back to. And, you know, there are all kinds of people you have to know. There are all kinds of specialized kind of work that you need to have someone solid for, because things can happen. Like you need somebody who can do roofing, siding, gutters, windows, all that stuff. So yeah, I mean, I would imagine that would be very difficult. So yeah, I don't know. But like I said, I don't really know anybody who's tried it. So
you bring up a good point, and it's I don't know. We're like you about, as of the recording of this podcast, we're a little over 3 years in, 3.5 years in our company. Mm-hmm. And I was just talking to Jack earlier. We were talking about this, and that you think about where our company is now, even just a year ago, even, you know, at 3.5 years in versus 2.5 years in, and the amount of systems that we have in place and the amount of relationships that we have in place to do, like you say, specialized things. You know, we have a title company that we love that understands us and understands, you know, typically what our needs are. You know, we have certain guys that are better at roofs. We have certain guys that are better at windows. I mean, like we've got, and we've also got crews that we can trust. I mean, we went through, I don't know, gosh, 7 or 8 different crews that cannot absolutely be trusted. In no way, shape, or form can they be trusted. And that cost us hundreds of thousands of dollars in that learning curve. So, yeah, I think there's a lot to be said for not just only hanging your hat into a certain industry, but being in the trenches for years and having done business with a lot of those same players over and over and over again. And one of the reasons our relationship with you works so well is we've done a bunch of deals together. And we know we're going to continue to do a bunch of deals together. And just to be transparent to the listeners, I mean, there are situations where I know we've come to you and I said, Isaac, you know, look, we got to be at these kind of numbers on this property. And you were very kind and you said, you know, okay, I'll suck it up. I'll make next to nothing or nothing on this property because I know it'll help you guys out. But the other thing, you know, is you're also going to sell us a whole bunch more properties and you'll make it up somewhere else. Right. And it'll all work out in the wash. And that's really, you know, the value of that kind of relationship. So, you know, I feel, you know, obviously I feel blessed for us to have this relationship with you. And I know you feel the same way, but it's, you know, it's very mutually beneficial, let's just say.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I mean, we've definitely worked with a lot of buyers. I mean, we definitely love working with you guys. Everything's super transparent and easy. So yeah, I mean, it's definitely valuable to have these kind of relationships. And one thing I will say is I've only really been in business for 3.5 years, but we as a family have been here for over almost 7 years now. So we've been able, even before we started really ramping it up, we were able to meet all kinds of different people, even before we really started getting full-time into it. So we were able to develop those relationships, and we have a lot of people we've known for a long time. So and they know other people. So it's just a massive network.
Yeah. And if you're listening and want to come here from out of state and build a team, I'm not suggesting that that's a bad idea. What I am suggesting is just understand what we're doing. And that's to a certain extent, if you think that you can do that much better than what we're already doing with all of our relationships and all the systems that we've got in place, hey, more power to you. I think that's
Have at it.
Have at it.
Good
Because
luck.
I've interfaced with a number of investors on some of these real estate forums that said, oh, well, you're taking all the meat off the bone. And, when I really start pressing them for, what happened on the deal, and I start looking at their numbers, it's like, I could have done that for you in 5 minutes. You didn't have to spend a year and fly back and forth and do all that stuff. And you didn't really save anything. In fact,
a lot easier for them too, a lot less headache.
Yeah, exactly. And to a certain extent, I think it's the end game. I mean, I've had some investors legitimately that say, hey, I really want to learn this stuff. And because I really want to someday be doing this full time. That's a different story.
Yeah.
Right. But if you're the kind of guy like you're white collar, mid management, and you're just trying to, build a nice portfolio to have a nicer retirement, and you're never going to be in the trenches, then, just be careful of stepping in that trench in the first place. Because there are quite a few landmines, as we've learned.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So, Jack, do you have any? I feel like squeezed a lot of good juice out of this guy today.
Yeah, no, this is great. I think let's go with the last question. And Isaac has been on our podcast before, so he knows the last question, right? So what should we have asked you that we didn't?
That we didn't.
Didn't, yes.
Yes.
I don't know.
Or is there anything that you want to cover that we didn't cover?
I think we covered everything. Can't really think of anything, to be honest with you. I mean,
what's your favorite color?
Not tan. I don't like the color of these walls. I like orange and blue.
Okay. Me too. I like orange and blue. I want to ask you one more question because I think this is a good way to wrap up. You have, I'm speaking specifically about Indianapolis right now. Okay. Because a lot of investors come in here and, this is very much a mecca for investors, but I see not a very different, but certainly a different landscape to the marketplace here than when I moved here 3.5 years ago. Yeah. And I know that it's different for you than when you moved here ironically, we came here at about the same time and didn't know each other for a while.
February 28, 2016. That's when I moved here.
All right. So you got me by about 5 months.
Okay.
So what is different now about the market in Indianapolis? What are the changes that you have seen and where do you see things going?
In terms of where things are going, I can't really predict that. I don't know. But in terms of what I have seen, there's been a lot of redevelopment. There's been a lot of people coming in here and doing new builds and coming into certain areas like Mapleton Fall Creek. I mean, that's, to be transparent, that's where I live. And there's definitely been, both houses across the street were totally redone and sold for pretty much retail pricing. So just a lot more redevelopment. I believe there's also been quite a bit of population growth. So just redevelopment, more people coming in, higher rental rates. And in terms of where it's going, I don't know. I mean, I wouldn't say I have
crystal ball,
a rock solid, like a crystal ball about like where it's going to go. Who knows? I'm really not sure because I didn't think some of the things that have happened would happen. So it's just
So let me ask a different way: are you seeing continual upward price pressure? Is it still happening?
Yeah, I would say it's stabilizing. It's kind of, it's gone up and up and up, and I think it's still going up a little bit, but not quite as much. Yeah. So who knows if that means it'll go boom or if it'll keep going up again, or if it's just what it is now.
Yeah.
It's hard to say, but I would say, it's stable at this point.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, to put an asterisk on that, obviously we have seen some upward price pressure over the last couple of years. we've seen a little bit of rent increases, but I don't feel like, at least in the C-class neighborhoods that we're operating in, that we've seen an increase in rent that is commensurate with the upward price pressure of the price of the property. I very much look forward to those rents coming up because obviously that means greater returns for investors. So I see that happening. But the other thing that I see happening is just like what you said. I mean, I live 3 blocks from you, as you know. So, I mean, I get what you're saying. And it's really, really cool to be living in a city that is going through this kind of a renaissance. I mean, there are flips and redos and stuff everywhere. And to a certain extent, there isn't really any part of the inner city, the older, kind of more unique architecture that isn't being addressed somehow. No, some of it is old and dilapidated and still boarded up, but you could look at a property like that in anywhere in Indy within a 3-block radius of any property that's boarded up, you're going to still be able to find something that's been rehabbed and nice. You never have to go more than 3 blocks. And that to me is really interesting.
Yeah, and even the parts that you mentioned that are a little more dilapidated, there's still opportunities in those areas, and the potential rental return is higher, I would say, than other parts where these out-of-state investors are.
Yeah, very cool. All right, I think we've done really well on this, gentlemen.
Yeah, we're good.
Yeah, Isaac, thank you very, very much. Are you wanting to divulge any of your personal information? Like if somebody wants to find you, is there a way that they can reach you?
Yeah, our website is Parrot PG. That's parrot like the bird, pg.com. You can also just call me up anytime. My phone number is 317-204-2900. We're on Facebook, we're on Instagram, we're on Twitter. You can reach us there. All our deals are on there, and any way you want to get in touch with me is readily available.
Fantastic. And we'll make sure to put that stuff in the show notes. And again, thank you for your help, your expertise, your wisdom, your guidance, and for all the good deals you give us.
Oh, anytime.
All right. It's a wrap. Thanks, guys.